We're in the Rare Book and Manuscript Library at Columbia University, and we're talking to Ty Jones, curator of American manuscripts in the division. And we've asked Ty to come here to talk to us about documents and what they reveal to us about women, and then about how difficult they are to use when we're hunting for women in the archives. But before we go there, we want to take one quick look at a particularly revealing set of documents that came into the library's hands just a couple of years ago. Can you talk to us about this collection and how you acquired it?
Sure, Alice. This is the Sally Goodgold papers, and they arrived here in the last 5 or 6 years, I think, and they were processed and made available to researchers, and so they're now in wide use, and researchers come and use these materials to ask a variety of questions about New York City politics, New York City history, efforts to reform government, and also women's history. So Sally Goodgold is not a famous person, but she had two really great qualities when it comes to library archive. One, she did a lot of really important work on a lot of central issues, and two, she seems to have saved lots of her correspondence and other materials over the years. So the materials are here, and they're available for use, and they're really a fascinating collection of unexpected documents about the city's history.
So she was not a famous person, but she was a person who was very much involved in the running of the city at some level. She was interested in good government, she was interested in the politics of the city, she was interested in civic organization, in, I suppose, what we sometimes call civil society.
That's right, and I know that you're being a little bit demure here because she was also a friend of yours, so you know her far better than I know her.
I actually never.
Oh, you never met her? Well, but yes, that's right. So she...
but I knew her son.
You knew her son. So that's right. I mean, I think she was kind of a generation of activist women in New York. This was an era of urban crisis, of urban renewal, and I think there were people like Sally occupying various niches throughout the city. And we have other collections here about people who were focused primarily on school integration and on other types of reform efforts. So I think she's of a period of a time when you did see this type of really organization-based reform efforts. And so it's a really crucial collection on its own, and also as part of a larger set of social forces.
Mm. And what fascinates me about this particular collection is not only how much she managed to save, but the detail that it exposes of what it took to actually influence the shape or the form of good government. So the file that we're looking at now is one that was put together after the New York City blackout of 1977, when the city went dark for almost 24 hours. And there was a good deal of, I would say, looting and other kinds of misbehavior. And
we would say liberating
right.
Depends on
right, which side you were on.
Yeah.
And Sally Goodgold, who was then a long-standing member of the City Club of New York, if City Club is one of the good government organizations, is asked to head a task force on, what does she call it? This is a task force on emergency preparedness.
Right.
And before she decides what kinds of emergency preparedness to do, Sally decides to send out an inquiry to all the trustees of the City Club, and then the inquiry goes further. asking them what they think of the police department and its job and how it did its job. So, and she gives us the kinds of questions that she wants to ask, and then asks for additional questions.
That's right. So this is a great example of some of the surprises of archival research. This is not in a folder marked Police Department. It's in a folder marked City Club 1976, 1977. And so a researcher who was interested in the city in that time period and went to this folder would be rewarded with this amazing, candid set of handwritten memos between prominent members of the City Club about their main concerns about New York City's police department. So it's a hidden document in the sense that one of the main archival interests of it is not advertised on the face of the folder, but once you get into it, you find this really amazing set of evidence.
And like so many documents, the devil is in the details. It's in exactly the kinds of questions that she asks that reveal something of the anxieties of the 1970s in the face of this kind of misbehavior. So she asks, how many police officers are really on duty during the day? This, of course, written in her own hand. How are we prepared to face another blackout? Whether the so-called mass, what is the so-called mass disorder plan for the city? Well, does the city in 1977 have a mass disorder plan? Probably not.
Right.
We know we have one now, and we, looking back on this, can see how the concern for dealing with mass disorder began. And then she proposes, this is a draft of the letter she's going to send out. If you've ever wanted to ask these or other questions concerning the New York City Police Department and its operations, now is the time to do it, she says. And then on the reverse, we see that she's still a little unclear about what it is that her mandate is. What is the task of this department or of this task force, she's asking. So you get here several layers of, you get the anxieties that are flooding around her, you get her effort to expand democratic participation, to get people involved, but you also get her own sense of where she fits in this. What's her authority and what's the authority of the task force.
That's right. And then you also see, I think, the technology of the civic group of the moment with the handwritten first draft, which is saved. If you imagine someone who's an activist today, the first draft is on a Microsoft Word document and is probably not saved. Then you have the mimeograph of the questions, which she mails out to all the members. And then as you flip them, you have the various trustees and members' handwritten questions that they want her to ask about the police department.
Right. So these are then additional questions which are going to get incorporated into the final questionnaire.
That's right.
And we don't actually have a copy of the final questionnaire here. How she managed not to save that, we don't know. But we can assume that many of these questions were incorporated in it. And we do have copies of some of the minutes that come later, which indicates that the questionnaire was asked or sent out and responded to, and that the City Club then went on to other business.
Right.
So do we know whether Sally Goodgold was effective or not? We can only surmise.
Right. And, as historians, the question effective is a difficult standard for historians to assess. It's a highly subjective and subject-based question. I think the other thing for me is that even without discovering the final report or the city's response, what you have here is a time capsule into the concerns of these middle class and upper middle class New Yorkers about the police department.
Yes.
And for that, you now have, so for instance, just seeing the one that catches my eye, what is the real statistic on unsolved reported robbery and why is it so low? So a concern about property crimes, for instance, which is probably a very different set of concerns than women in other parts of the city, perhaps.
Yes. But the other thing, of course, that's intriguing about documents like this is they tell us how seriously women like Sally Goodgold took their work, that they, because it was unpaid, because it was volunteer work of a kind, they did not simply slough it off. They took it seriously and they did their jobs. And that, for the historian of women, is intriguing. So we see women with a certain level of means and so on, actually plunging into the daily business of how to make the city a better place to live.
Right. And also I think this shows how the history of a topic such as the police department, which perhaps most people would not see as a topic that is a women's history topic or a gendered history topic, through these documents you actually can see, at least at one or two removes, that the concerns of at least these women in New York is eventually being directly presented to members of the police department in high authority and presumably taken very seriously. So it does reveal something about women's history, of course, about a topic, the police department, that is not intuitively clear that that's what's happening there.